Boom. That intro keeps getting better and better every week that we're getting the timer dialed in. But welcome back to NFL Week 5 Covers Contest Countdown Show with LVC and myself, Adam Chernoff, talking all things Circa Millions Week 5, but also talking your home contests as well, giving you all the information you need as we try what's proving to be an impossible task of predicting the top 5 consensus plays. I shouldn't say impossible. That's stretching it out. But we are having a bit of a struggle. And this week, probably many more questions than we have answers. What do you think about week 4 and what are you feeling going into week 5?
Week 4 was a frustrating week for me. I wasn't perfect like you were last week.
Easy now.
I struggled a little bit last week, but it was okay. I liked the games I had. You can't win them all. I was 15-15 last year. I'm 17-16 this year, so nothing to panic about. And I'm just happy to see you're doing so well.
It's getting uncomfortable at this point, but how it started out. It's nice, but it's like, Jesus, it's starting to really make you wonder about a few things. As we expected, though, last week in the Survivor, Buffalo, the massive 17-point favorite. They were obviously the most selected. A couple surprises when it comes to the million contest, where we were pretty adamant that we would see Tampa Bay in the top 5, and they were. We were pretty adamant that we would see Baltimore in the top 5. They were also there. But then we got a few surprises. And it's the second week in a row where we're seeing games that really aren't necessarily just that obvious public side that's getting selected. There's a little bit more handicapping and in-depth detail to it. And it's not necessarily number-driven either, where the contest numbers are off on the market. And the two that come to mind, certainly the Chargers, who made the top 5. We saw Las Vegas enter the top 5 for 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season, full reversal. And then the Seattle Seahawks there at +3 snuck in as well. What surprised you most from what ended up making the top 5 in week 4?
The Chargers certainly surprised me because I think I mentioned it. A lot of people don't like to leave their last game to Monday night. And then even if they do, the Raiders had been getting so much support prior to that. So it was a surprise. I couldn't believe it that game was on there, number 1, because I thought it would be more equal. And the fact that it was the Chargers.
It was very surprising. And we were going back and forth in a couple games late where we couldn't get that 5th selection. And ultimately that proved to be one of them that didn't ultimately come through for us. But nevertheless, we're on to week 5, continuing the pursuit of picking the consensus plays. And the disclaimer that I have to give every week, these are not the contest picks that LVC nor I are putting in. These are what we anticipate to be the top 5 consensus plays. And I think the value here that we're hearing from a lot of you guys watching is the discussion back and forth as we try on the fly, really, as we're live reacting to these numbers to figure out what's going to hit the top 5. I'm deferring to you this week, not because I want to be nice, but because, quite frankly, I just don't know where to start. This is a brutal week, in my opinion, both for betting and trying to figure out where to go with these top 5 consensus plays, because there's a lot of different directions you can go on the board. Does anything stand out to you?
You know, I actually cheated a little bit because every week prior,
we need all the help we can get.
I every other week I went in completely blind, and all the hemming and hawing clearly showed. I'm like, So this week I actually looked a little bit early, and I was like, ugh. So I think I was better off just waiting to be surprised. So I think the only way you attack it is straight down the line and see what you get left.
All right. So I'll single one out to start, because I think there's a chance that we might see this as a very popular game between now and game time for a couple of reasons. And the team I have in mind is the Tennessee Titans at 4.5 on the road against Jacksonville. And the reason I bring this game up is, if you haven't seen it yet, there was a video that sort of surfaced around Urban Meyer and some rumors about him maybe not going back to Jacksonville with the team after their Thursday night game against Cincinnati. Stayed back in Ohio, got in a little bit of trouble, and there's been some back and forth on that. The Jags lose Chark, long-term, key receiver, which is going to shift up that offense. Have some O-line injuries. And the Titans, last week, we saw them against the Jets playing without both Brown and Julio. There's a chance we may see Brown back in this game. There's some positive practice comments coming around that situation. But I see this line just with all those situations and everything piling up between now and Saturday when these numbers lock, potentially increasing further. It's open 3.5. It's now up to 4.5. Not going to take a lot to get this to 6. I think we just might see this move. And so from a top 5 consensus perspective, maybe this number, just because it had to be posted now, maybe a little bit short, and everything situation-wise may drive some attention to it.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to put this in the maybe category.
Good start with the maybe. Okay. Any disagreements there by how people are going to look at the Jacksonville coaching situation and all of that drama starting to surface?
I just think I don't think anybody wants anything to do with Jacksonville. So by default, Tennessee will, get the picks out of that matchup for sure.
Okay. If hypothetically, and I'm putting you on the spot here, Brown and Jones were to somehow be able to play in this game, is this 7?
Yeah, I don't know, by a strong 6.5 though. I think it'll get support all the way up to that little corridor, 6.5, 7.
I'm with you there too. And that would, if you're seeing a 1.5 or 2 point difference between now and the contest on Saturday, that's going to be enough to draw it. So I think as tough as this week is, that's a good start with the Tennessee Titans at 4.5. I'll throw one other team in a similar price range out at you. And there's a team we mentioned in the opener, the Raiders, 5.5 point favorites at home to the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields named the starter. Andy Dalton openly admitting he's now taking the back seat in the mentor role. We saw the Bears struggle, to put it lightly, against Cleveland when Fields came in for the first time. Last week looked very good against the Lions team that's dead last in pressure rate, dead last as a secondary. Now it's on the road across the country, potentially without Mack and Hicks, against the Raiders and Derek Carr. Raiders laying 5.5. It's a team that's got a lot of support in the first couple of weeks of the contest. Swerve last week. Are bettors back to betting them in the contest this week, laying the 5.5?
Well, that Monday night game leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth because the Raiders really didn't,
no show.
And then, you've got the other side of the coin too with the Bears. The Lions really shot themselves in the paw last week because they were inside the 10-yard line 4 times and got no points. But on the plus side for the Bears, didn't the play calling change finally last week?
Don't say that to Matt Nagy. He's convinced that everything still goes through him and it doesn't matter. But there were rumors about the playbook definitely changing. How can't it when you have Justin Fields under center instead of Andy Dalton? You have to have something different. I like the paw analogy there, associating the changing out the body part of the foot to represent the animal on the helmet. That was sharp. So maybe Raiders, not necessarily one just off of that Monday night performance that's going to catch a lot of attention. Let's talk about 2 teams that are held in very high regard through the betting market so far. Start with the Arizona Cardinals. Since we've hit record, this is going to be an interesting discussion because they're also right at that short home favorite, 5.5 point favorites, less than the key number of 6 in the contest. But we've seen in the last 10 minutes here on the odds screen a wave of money come in supporting the 49ers. That's down to 4.5. But I'll tell you what, I sent out a thread on Monday night after the Monday Nighter saying, who's the most complete team in football? And it was an overwhelming slew of answers on the Arizona Cardinals through 4 weeks. They're the only undefeated team left. People can't get enough of this offense. At 5.5 against the 49ers with those injuries and Lance getting the start, how do you think people are going to be looking at this one?
I think Arizona's going to get a lot of support, but then I think a lot of people are going to take notice that they're the only undefeated team, and this is a flat spot, and that they've San Francisco's been able to sign a field goal kicker, and they've been able to have some preparation without Garoppolo. So I don't know. I think it's going to get some two-way action, quite frankly.
From a contest perspective, if this is at 5.5, it's now locked in, and we see a 4.5 on the board at two places now, with the most important spot on the board, 5 plus 105, potentially going lower. From just a contest strategy in general, if you're seeing a 5.5 on a team you like in the contest, but the market showing 4 or 4.5, how are you approaching that personally? Is that just an automatic stay away from you for laying more than the market? Are you looking elsewhere? Or is it still in potentially your range if it's within your numbers?
I'm probably playing the minus 5.5 or staying off the game, but those numbers are so unimportant to me. It really is a nothing burger.
So it's just the complete lack of value in the 5 itself, that if you're laying 4.5 and you're laying 5.5, it's not a significant difference considering how few games ultimately land on 5.
Yeah, I mean, I sit there and I hope that I like the minus 5.5 side of a game like that because I know so many fish will swim to the 1 point of line value.
So speaking of a point of line value that we may potentially see, or maybe a move over another key number of 7 going to a 9, which in a similar way to 5, both 9 and 5, very insignificant. We're looking at the Lions going on the road to face Minnesota. The Vikings got hammered yesterday in the market. We're about a very cheap 7.5 or an expensive 7. They're now up to 9.5. So a huge movement there. The Lions practice report is as confusing, long, and complicated as anyone we've seen not named the 49ers coming into this week. This number, 0.5 point high on where the rest of the market is, even 0.5 point higher than where Circa currently is. So there's a bit of shading going on here with the contest. Does that tell you anything, or what are you looking at with this number against the Lions?
I think this number is going to continue to rise, number one. I mean, they're basically I think they're scrolling combing the universities to see if they can get some emergency help. I mean, who's sitting up for the Lions? I mean, this is unbelievable that it hasn't received more notice, quite frankly. It's just that people are so apathetic about the Lions and the Vikings and where the spread is that it's one of those games where people will get to it later on, if that makes any sense. There's only so much stuff that people can pay attention to throughout the week. And the Lions are fielding nobody. I mean,
nobody.
Goff is going to be – I mean, Goff should come up with a little cough and sit out. I mean, what's he going to do?
And we know with him historically, when the offensive line in front of him can't protect him, that's really when we see the significant drop-off. One of the worst quarterbacks under pressure in the entire league, and the Lions potentially without 2 or 3 starting offensive linemen. They lose their best pass rusher. The secondary is already riddled with injuries. They're starting rookies. Now you have to face the wide receiver sets of Thielen and Jefferson of Minnesota, and Kirk Cousins quietly putting up some very good numbers. Everyone's knocking him last week, but if there's a coach and a defense that's going to know exactly what he likes to do, it's Kevin Stefanski, who essentially built him into what he is. So a lot of people knocking them for last week. I don't think that's the case. But if we're looking at 9.5, does this have top 5 potential?
Yeah, I mean, I would put it in the maybe category at the minus 9.5. I think it'll close higher than that.
So we've got 2 officially in the maybe category. Is that right, between Minnesota and Tennessee?
Yeah, and they're both pretty sad. So let's hope we find something better.
This is grim this week. So let me throw one more at you that I think stands out just in general, and that would be the Green Bay Packers -3 on the road at the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football fall behind 14-0 against the Jags before that second half comeback. That was very close to being 21-0 at the break. And you had the goal line stand, and that really flipped the game around. Was that enough to give bettors optimism going into this week and back to Cincinnati Bengals? Or is this everyone looking at the Packers off a win last week, remembering what they did Monday night, seeing this short number on the road and going to flock towards Green Bay?
I think that there is little doubt that the Packers will get the support in the situation. The Bengals are perceived as, okay, you've had some good fortune here, and you're just good enough for teams to have to start to take you seriously. And Green Bay is a type of team that can take you seriously. And I don't have to lay more than a field goal. I'm in.
So is that are we putting that in the maybe pile to go along?
No, I think that belongs in the in.
Green Bay's already in. The first one? Are we locking one in here?
Yeah, I think it has to be on the in.
Packers are in. Okay, we're this is proving to be easier than I anticipated. So we're in with the Packers. We've got the Titans as a maybe, and we've got the Vikings as a maybe. So we've got those two sitting there. Two other popular teams: the Buffalo Bills, 2.5-point underdogs at KC, a game that I will be very much looking forward to being in attendance for, making the trip down there to watch that one. And then we're also looking at the Dallas Cowboys, now 7-point favorites against the Giants. Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard, both optimistic to play on Sunday, which means the Giants get two receivers back. But don't look now, Daniel Jones, through 3 weeks, leading this offense to 300-plus yards against Denver, 485 yards last week. There's been some pretty good offensive performances without a lot of key pieces. Now that team potentially getting a lot healthier. How we look at the very popular Cowboys laying 7 against the Giants and the Bills getting 2.5 on the road at KC.
You know what? I think that Kansas City is going to get quite a bit of support. Home team just have to win by 3, and I get to win. I think a lot of people that think the Bills have a good shot are going to shy away because they don't get that 3 for the push. And that's why I like to see games like this lined on the 2.5. You know, it really makes you think, and it really sways a lot of people's opinions on it. So if you like the Bills, you're going to have you have to have a lot of conviction. You lose that push opportunity, and a lot of people are going to gravitate toward the Chiefs, you know, not having a push possibility on the 3.
So let me ask you this then. So this game opened 4. It wasn't a true open of 4, but we did see it at 4, got bet down to 3.5 immediately. And then that didn't last for very long. By Monday morning, we were at a flat 3. So KC at less than a field goal, with how good that offense has been, just blowing away teams from an EPA per play perspective. Yards per play is off the charts, and they're turning the ball over at a huge rate. They've lost the 6th most EPA per play off of turnovers. Very uncharacteristic, and still they're at the top for offensive numbers. Offense looks phenomenal. At 2.5, I definitely agree we can see them getting support, but let's just hypothetically say this was 3 or 3.5. Would that have been enough to kill any support coming in for KC? How important is this 3 in this matchup?
Oh, I think Buffalo would have been selected number 1 if it was 3.5. And I think it's just right where it's supposed to be. I think this is going to get I think it's going to be interesting to see what the general population thinks on this game, because Buffalo does have a lot of support, and you're going to hear a lot about Kansas City having the worst defense in the league. I mean, their defense is atrocious, and not against great teams. I mean, Philadelphia, did they have a starting offensive lineman last week when they ran up and down the field on Kansas City? I mean, they didn't.
I will say this, though. When we think about Kansas City defense, they're very poor against the run historically. That's been the case for a number of years now. And they struggle with any type of mobile quarterback, and they struggle with pace of the opponent. And when we're looking at their schedule, which a schedule for a defense largely reflective of the ultimate numbers, it really depends on who you play. But you consider that they played the Browns and the Ravens to start the season. Those are two opponents that, if you were to hand pick bad matchups for this KC defense, I think those are the two teams you lead off with. So I think they do get a bit of a reprieve there, that they're maybe not as bad as they look, but still, then what does that make them? 26th, 27th in reality? Like, how much is that ultimately going to matter?
I remember watching the playoffs last year, and Buffalo had no hope. I mean, they were just outclassed from the go, and I think that that's going to resonate with people this week, and they're not going to be able to get that out of their heads. You know, hey, I saw them just run all over Buffalo, and it wasn't even close. You knew you didn't even have the remote hope in that game, as far as I was concerned, because Kansas City could do whatever they want, and that's why I think it's going to be one of the top 5 pick this week.
October 19th last year, that was the game in the rain. The Chiefs were 5.5-point favorites in Buffalo. And then in the playoffs in Kansas City, they were 3-point favorites. And we have to remember that Buffalo finished last year looking fantastic. So that market very much was corrected in time for the playoff game. But now we're looking from that playoff game just a few weeks removed, and we're seeing that now off of the 3. And so I think that definitely matters too, as sort of factored into how people are looking at both of these teams, especially when we saw it at the open in the market above the 3. People were looking at that number from just 5 or 6 weeks ago, last the offseason. But most parts on both of these teams very much intact from last year. And they were saying if that game was closing 3, we're now seeing 3.5. The Bills have looked better through 4 weeks than the Chiefs. Why are we getting the 0.5 point extra? I think that led to a lot of interest in taking that hook. But now that it's on the other side of 3, I think you're right that KC might be an intriguing play. So the question now is that a maybe, or is that going to ultimately be in?
I think it's an in because we have limited choices.
Limited is putting it very, very politely for what we're dealing with here. So we're in with Green Bay -3. We're in with KC -2.5. We've got the Titans as a maybe, and we've got the Vikings as a maybe. We're again sort of stuck on the 5th option here. So where are you looking at number 5 potentially rounding out this maybe pile before we go sort of rapid fire and eliminate some other games?
Well, you're not going to – I don't think you're going to see anything on the Thursday game just because people don't like the Thursday games. So
that one's already out in my mind.
Yeah. Jets and Falcons are an interesting game. But that just seems like an equal type pick game to me. That line seems pretty solid, and I can't see support – I can't see too much support on either side. What about you?
I don't either. And that you get the London game, that situation. So it's essentially a neutral price, which I don't think now with the movement, we're seeing that at 3, maybe at 4. There's disagreement, but now that it's 3, I don't think you're getting support either way there. So I think that one's definitely in an elimination spot that we can count it out. Miami, Tampa Bay, Bucks laying 10. Certainly the Dolphins here, I don't think they're going to be the side unless the angle of the Buccaneers secondary that will be missing 4 or 5 starters from week 1 if Dean plays. If not, they're turning over the entire secondary over the course of 5 weeks, unless people really buy into that. But Jacoby Brissett for the Dolphins hasn't shown us any ability whatsoever to push the ball downfield. So you might be without 5 starters in the secondary, but does it matter? Are people going to gravitate towards that 10?
Well, and then you've got Fuller out again. So
exactly.
The Dolphins somehow become the worst team in the league fast. So it's surprising. I can't see one-sided support on either one of those sides.
I don't either. So we'll cross that one out. Philadelphia, Carolina. Panthers now a 3-point favorite. We saw this number move this morning as well. This was Panthers -4, now 3. McCaffrey was on the practice field in pads yesterday. No word on his practice status yet today, but a very limited sense of limited for the terminology that he was deemed with. Either side here at 3, intriguing to you?
Oh, boy. I think the Eagles aren't going to get the support, so I think it would be either Carolina or the Eagles for a public view.
So I think we're crossing it out. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Saints, Washington, one of those pesky short road favorites. New Orleans 2.5-point favorites, but Washington got the comeback win. Those players are buying into what Heineke's doing. They got professional support last week in the market. Saints lose at home to the Giants. Now they go back on the road again. They were unable to go home for the first 3 weeks of the season. They were, because of the hurricane situations. Now they're going back on the road. Significant travel for them. The Saints getting support here at less than a field goal.
Well, that just seems like one of those equal games. Also, I think people are fed up with the Saints and trying to predict them. So it's going to be harder to support the Saints. But by the same token, Washington's got that home field. I can't see. I can see it going both ways. Public support there.
It's another tough one, and then there's two more tough ones here that I think they have clear handicapping angles, and we've seen games in the contest pop up out of nowhere because there's strong angles one way or the other. And so as we work down the list here, we've got the Titans as a maybe, we've got the Vikings as a maybe, we've already got the Packers in, but these next two really stand out to me because the Broncos, all signs point to Drew Lock being the starting quarterback. That's a significant downgrade from Teddy Bridgewater and what he's been able to do. But if you're going to go against that, you're backing Ben Roethlisberger with a hip injury and the Steelers offense that looks like the worst unit in the league that can't move the football to save their life and doesn't have an offensive line to stand up against this Broncos pass rush. That's who you're going to have to put in your corner. And so I think this is very potentially divisive, but is it popular enough to make the top five?
I think it definitely belongs in the maybe category for Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you why, because Green Bay's valued highly. Pittsburgh went on the road. They got screwed again on a call. They could have very well won that game, and that got a lot of promotion that the Pittsburgh Steelers were feisty. They were in that game, and now their backs are definitely against the wall at home. I mean, if they lose this game, it's sayonara. So, and I don't think there's a lot of confidence in Locke. I think Denver was perceived by many as a no-show last week, even though they did legitimately do a lot of things well, and they were not a no-show. But they've got their own injuries. They've got their wide receiver injuries. They've got their couple defensive injuries. I just think Pittsburgh looks attractive here to pick them.
Okay, we can put that in the maybe pile. And as you're talking, I'm doing double duty here. Christian McCaffrey is on the practice field for a second day in a row for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know if that's officially been reported yet. If it's not, and you happen to have the Twitter feed on the side, refresh that in about a minute. And anyone listening to the show can definitely confirm that. But he is on the practice field from what I just got the text about. So that's could potentially change that number if he's able to go. Still no word on that yet. So then the other team that I was talking about that stood out to me in a similar situation, the Pats, 9.5-point favorites. Am I getting the 9.5 right in the contest? They shaded it higher, or did they go at the 8.5? But we will see the ticker here at the bottom scrolling around. They're 8.5-point favorites. So right in line with market. They're on the road at Houston for an offense that has not honestly been able to do that much this entire season, unless you're looking at that Jets game, which was defense aided. But I don't know where the hype is coming for this, and now they're laying more than a touchdown on the road. Houston looks terrible. Don't get me wrong. They're the worst team in football. But it's a spot where do you go and do you back Davis Mills in Houston getting this many points? Because surely this line is inflated.
I think this game just boils down to one simple issue is there's not going to be a volume high enough of people that are going to be interested in taking a side in that game. So I just see that as one of the lower volume picked games. Wouldn't you think?
I can see it being like right on the fringe, but it's like you're going to need north of 900 people going on an angle here out of was it 3,800 some in the contest. It seems like a significant jump for people to either lay that many with the Pats, which I don't know if many folks are comfortable doing, but I think even less are going to be comfortable taking those points with Davis Mills, just as bad as the Texans have looked. So it's really now we're running out of options aside from Cleveland and the Chargers. LA 2-point favorites at home. There's Christian McCaffrey confirmed as he's in practice. So we're breaking news and we're breaking down games. It's a dual effort here. Chargers 2-point favorites at home against the Browns. Cleveland number 1 in the league for net success rate, number 1 in net yards per play through 4 weeks. They're getting no respect. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I'm interested to see what happens here because you've got Cleveland on another road game. They didn't exactly light up the joint in Minnesota when everybody expected them to. And you've got the Chargers who looked really good on Monday Night Football, but we know what that oftentimes means for the following game on the short week. But they get to stay at home. Oh, yeah, where's home? So
San Diego.
Yeah.
San Diego is home.
But the Browns are probably going to have Browns have always traveled well. There's a lot of loyal Browns fans. So I think it's going to be a mixed crowd there. You know, this just seems like you're going to get kind of 50-50 people on this game. I think it's going to be one of the most selected games, but will it be one of the most lopsided games? I don't know, but it doesn't have to be lopsided if it's one of the most selected games.
Let me put it to you this way. I don't think anybody's giving LA any kind of advantage for home field. In general, for the league, it's between a point and a point and a half. So you're not giving the Chargers any advantage for home field. Who's making the Chargers better in their ratings than the Browns at this point?
Oh, I think, but the Herbert overhype train is having an effect in some regard. So, Cleveland's just been functionally boring. I mean, they were the taste of the town last year and got all the attention, and I thought we would never hear the end of it about them this year. But they've kind of gone, like Homer Simpson going back into the bushes sort of thing this year, and just quietly going about their business. So, the Chargers are out there, and they're just out there all the time, and Herbert's out there all the time, and people like to see a good story of come from nowhere. So, I think that's why they get a little bit of extra juice.
So we've got 2 games in, the Chiefs and the Packers. We've got a whole bunch on the maybe pile. Can I make a case for putting Tennessee at 4.5 just with how this line may potentially go into the top 5? Can that be one of the maybes to put in?
I think that's a good one.
Okay, I'm with you on that one. So we'll put Tennessee in as the 3rd. We've got 2 more. From the maybe pile, we're looking at Minnesota. We're looking at potentially Dallas. There's a number of teams here. What's the 4th one we're going to potentially slot in here?
Oh.
Putting you on the spot.
It's a really tough week. It really is.
It's brutal.
You know what?
The viewers are watching us squirm in real time here.
I think that Minnesota might make it in there.
I'm not opposed to putting that in there because that game is incredibly one-sided. And if I've had a great year betting, but I am beyond annoyed that I didn't take the 7.5 at even money. Got greedy, waited for 7, but
there were
if
7.
they're covering 7.5, they're most likely getting to 10.
Yeah, there were 7s available last night. I saw them. 7 minus 15s were available.
Us in Canada have different access than the very fortunate folks down in Nevada, where you're a drive away from a number of casinos.
Well, I was talking about your sources, not mine.
Well, they're only good some days of the week. We'll put it that way. So we're good with Minnesota then as number 4?
Yeah, I think we just have to back our way into that one. And, this is unfortunately going to be one of those weeks where it's going to be hard to be right on a Thursday when things are going to look a lot clearer Saturday morning, like much differently Saturday morning.
Number 5, as we're now coming into the 36th minute of the show, if we're going to wrap up the top 5 here, where are we looking?
I think just by default. Oh, wait a minute. We have Pittsburgh in there, don't we?
We did not agree on Pittsburgh. That was a maybe. But that's where you sounded very confident in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh better than the Minnesota, quite frankly.
Wow, we're not finding if we're going if we like Pittsburgh more than Minnesota, then Minnesota's the 5th and Pittsburgh's the 4th. Because I'm looking at the board now, and there's no other of the maybes that I would say are better than Minnesota. I was between Minnesota and Pittsburgh as the 4-5. So if you're 5-4 the other way, then I think Pittsburgh's the one that rounds out the 5.
It's not going to surprise me to see the Chargers make it. Possibly just because of the sheer volume of people playing that game.
You think it's more selected than the Vikings?
It's going to be I think the Vikings are going to be a lot more one-sided. I just don't know. You're going to have to. I put the Pittsburgh in. It's up to you now.
I think we keep Minnesota, and I think we go Pittsburgh to round out the 5. So then we're looking at. Yeah, the producers are right on it here. Packers, Chiefs, Steelers, Titans, and Vikings as the consensus 5 for week 5.
I think we have our 5.
I think we have our 5 too. Okay, we're in. Let's hope we can snag 3 of the 5. This has been brutally difficult through 5 weeks so far. Let's wrap it up with Survivor. Timothy Hutter with the comment. Thoughts on the Raiders as a contrarian Survivor play this week? As LVC smiles and grins. You were already thinking about it?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with the Raiders this week.
Vikings are going to be most selected, correct? Or is it going to be New England?
I think the Vikings, because they're the home team, there's a large amount of people that have a steadfast rule that they're not going to take road teams in Survivor. So that always knocks out a big block of people.
What percentage of the pool is going to be Minnesota this week?
I think probably about
I almost got you. Wait, we've got 17 weeks. I'm going to get you one of these weeks. So Minnesota most picked?
Yeah, it should be.
All right. We'll leave it at that one. I think that's one that stands out. Raiders were interesting. Other potential survivor would obviously be Tampa Bay at home to Miami. They're 10-point favorites. Those are the 2 big favorites on the card this week. That going to be more than Minnesota?
I keep on forgetting about the saving for the Thanksgiving and Christmas weeks. Tampa Bay's a Christmas week, isn't it?
You put me on to pull up the schedule. We go over this every week, and then every week I forget about which team is going to be on the Christmas day and the Thanksgiving
just assuming that you're saving your Thanksgiving and Christmas teams.
The Browns are the Christmas Day team, along with the Colts, Cardinals, 49ers, Titans, and Packers. The Thanksgiving week teams, or that Thanksgiving Day, is Bears, Lions, Raiders, Cowboys, Bills, Saints. So you're dodging Tampa Bay in both of those.
Yeah, so Tampa Bay looks better. It looks pretty good there too.
And what would the pool percentage on Tampa Bay be?
I think about it.
Too easy. All right, so that'll do it for the Survivor. One last order of business. Most selected for the Circa Million. You get 1 pick each. You lead off this week. Where are you going for the most selected team in Circa Million?
I think I led off last week, didn't I?
No, it was me last week, and we were all square. So it's tied to a piece after you got out to the 2-game lead. We're putting you on the spot here. You get to lead off week 5. Where are you going? Most selected. Steak dinner on the line at the end of the season.
It's
First 4 weeks have been a wash.
I'm going to go with the Packers.
Packers it is. I'm going to go with the Titans because I think that line is going to move between now and Saturday when these prices lock.
Yeah, you might be right.
Packers versus the Titans. All right. That'll do it for us. One more time, the consensus picks for LVC and I for week 5, our projections: Packers -3, Chiefs -2.5, Steelers at a pick'em, Titans 4.5, and Vikings 9.5. Hopefully we catch 3 of the 5. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this Thursday. We'll see you back here next week, 10 a.m. Pacific time, as we react to week 6 and hopefully recap a successful week number 5. Talk to you then.